Guys, there's a saying that you must have heard at some point in your childhood. What you see is not really there, and what you can't see is present all around you. Today's story takes place in a remote, quiet town in the US. This is the story of a man named Mark. No incident has happened to him, just once he's faced fear again and again. The events I'm about to share will chill you to the bone. This story begins in 2010 when Mark, who was 40 years old, was returning from New York City to his hometown in rural Pennsylvania to visit his parents. Mark had left the US years ago to study and work abroad. He had tried to visit many times but had never made it. But one day he received a call saying his father's health had taken a turn for the worse. Mark booked a flight home immediately. After landing at the Philadelphia airport, he rented a car and drove straight to his hometown in Pennsylvania. Everything seemed familiar yet different. The town he left 20 years ago had changed, but many things had stayed the same. As he drove past his old neighborhood, he noticed the little corner store where he used to buy candy was still there. But now it was run by the son of the original owner. Excited to see his parents, Mark finally reached his childhood home. He knocked on the door, but no one answered. He knocked again, but the door remained shut. People from the neighborhood started gathering around, staring at him. Mark felt uncomfortable but figured his parents must be out. Just as he was about to leave, the door creaked open on its own. Assuming it was just the wind, he walked inside, calling out for his mother. A voice came from upstairs. It was his mother's voice. Mark rushed upstairs and found his mother sitting beside his father, both looking terribly ill. His mother hugged him, and Mark became emotional, feeling guilty for having stayed away so long. He was glad to finally be with them, but little did he know that his first night back in his childhood home would be terrifying. That night, as he went downstairs to get some water, he heard strange noises coming from the windows. When he looked closely, he saw handprints on the glass. It seemed as though someone was outside in the darkness, peering in. Startled, Mark ran back upstairs to his parents. The next morning, he told his mother what had happened. She brushed off, explaining that there was a man in the neighborhood who had lost his wife years ago. Since then, he had lost his mental balance and wandered around day and night. Though to believe that it wasn't something supernatural, Mark dismissed the strange event. Later that day, Mark received an invitation from an old friend, David, to attend a party. He hadn't seen his friends in years, so he decided to go. Before leaving, his father warned him, no matter what, make sure you're back home before midnight. Don't stay out too late. Mark shrugged off his father's warning and went to the party. He was having a great time, catching up with friends, but when he looked at his watch, it was already midnight. Just as he was about to leave, David pulled him aside and told him something unsettling. Mark, you're going to have to cross the Ridgeville Bridge to get back home, right? That bridge has a dark history. Back in 1990, about 50 people were killed there in a single night. They say the spirits of those people still haunt the bridge at midnight. Mark laughed it off, thinking it was just a spooky story to scare him. But as he left the party, driving down the empty roads, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As he approached Ridgeville Bridge, he saw a little girl standing at the side of the road, crying. He hesitated, thinking it might be some sort of illusion, but his sense of duty made him stop the car. As soon as he did, the crying stopped. He got out of the car and walked toward the girl, asking her why she was out so late. She said, "I can't find my mom and dad. They keep calling me, but I can't find them." Mark asked where the voices were coming from, and the girl pointed toward a pond near the bridge. When they reached the pond, Mark saw the bodies of 2 people floating in the water. Horrified, he was about to jump in to help when the girl grabbed his hand and said, "You can save them, but what about the others?" Confused, Mark asked, "What do you mean?" The girl pointed again, and when Mark looked closer, he saw that the pond wasn't just holding 2 bodies, there were dozens, maybe 50 bodies, floating there. Realizing this wasn't real, he ran back to his car and sped off, heading straight for his parents' house. When he arrived, he pounded on the door, but no one answered. Freezing in the cold night, he saw a figure walking toward him. It was the same man his mother had mentioned, the one who wandered the neighborhood. The man peered into the windows, just like Mark had seen the night before. Mark, now furious, confronted him, asking why he had been lurking around the house. The man turned to him and said, "What parents? No one has lived in this house for 20 years." Mark was stunned. The man continued, explaining that Mark's parents had died in a protest 20 years ago. The house had been empty ever since. The man had been watching the house, wondering why Mark kept coming back and knocking on the door, as if someone was still there. Mark was devastated. He realized that the people he had spoken to, his parents, weren't alive. They were spirits, trapped in the house. Unable to bear the truth, Mark left and returned to New York, haunted by the memories of his parents and the events at Ridgeville Bridge. Even today, in 2024, Ridgeville Bridge remains a place of mystery. Locals say that if you pass by at midnight, you might still hear the cries of those lost.